of them jumps up to the top and is like, "We made it!"
Fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Brilliant. Nice.
It's the way you tell them.
You got to get the like into the show, right? Yeah. You can put the people right into the scene. That's the key.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the digital download. Rob is not here, so I'm going to do my best at getting this right. The longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn, now globally syndicated somewhere.
Everywhere, globally.
Everywhere. Globally syndicated. We're everywhere. You can find us anywhere, people. Good morning. I am Tracy Borison, and I am guest hosting this episode of the Digital Download. As you can maybe see, we don't have our fancy background, and we don't have our fancy logo because we don't have our fancy Rob with us today.
Don't have our fancy
but you can still expect all the good conversation that we normally have here on the Digital Download. So if you are tuning in live, please say hello. Let us know you are here in the chat. Oh, there's Fancy Rob. And look how fancy he looks.
Yeah. You've got a jacket on, Rob.
I'm at university today.
And that'll be why people call you the Professor.
Yes.
You'll notice
Rob,
I've been hanging around Brits and Canadians too much because I called it university. Here in the States, we say I'm at college.
Oh.
This is something I always was curious about because people say college regardless of whether or not it's a university or a college. And like I went to the University of Alberta, so I call it university because that's what it is. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today. Yeah. But we're glad to have you, Fancy Rob, which I'm now going to call you, by the way, just so you know. We're here to talk about what are we here to talk about? The cost of inaction? Something like that.
Yes.
This is what happens when Tracy hosts the show. It's 7:00 where I am, so we ad-lib more. And we have a wonderful special guest with us for today. But before we introduce our special guest, who's kind of an old guest that you might recognize from the panel before.
He looks very old.
Yes, he's super old. He makes the rest of us look young. I don't know what's happening today, you guys. Let's start with a round of introductions, and then we'll get to Jordan. So, now we're closer. This is actually better because you can see less of my parents' office.
Do we like that?
I like it because you can see less of my parents' office that I tried to madly scramble. Okay, Alex, you go first with intros because that's what's happening.
Okay. So whilst I'm talking, I'll be on the big screen. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Alex Abbott, the founder of Sapiro and the creator of the Conversation Operating System. And if we have time a little bit later, I might share a story about the cost of inaction, and I had a little help from ChatGPT, but I do like the story that I found. Now I've confused things because we don't know who's next. The order.
Now you have to just pop someone up, and it will be that person.
Okay, the professor.
Hi all, I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results, a proud DLA Ignite partner, and I help startups scale.
Oh, thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Mark go next. Hi, I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
And we should point out your festive jumper, I think.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite, which you just heard Tim say that because we're business partners. And I'm not really famous for anything at all, but I'm delighted to be surrounded by such a fantastic group of people.
This is like intro roulette, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Jordan.
Bonjour.
And I'm on mute. Hello, everyone. I am Jordan Abbott, also known as the Sales Poet. Previously, a proud DLA Ignite partner before I went off and worked for Vidyard for some time.
Well, you technically are again now because you've rejoined Sapiro temporarily.
Indeed. Are you ever really not a proud DLA Ignite partner?
That is a good question.
Once you're in, you're in. There's no going back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just when I thought I was out.
thought I'd escaped. No, really, really keen to be back on the download. So thank you very much for having me back.
All right. So, Jordan, this topic is kind of related to some experiences you might have had recently. So let's talk about the cost of inaction from your perspective in terms of why we're even having this conversation today.
Yeah, certainly. So I think the key thing was during my time at Vidyard, a lot of the messaging was just purely falling on deaf ears. They've done some great work with some great businesses, creating these insane uplifts, but the way the buyers are currently thinking just doesn't really align to that uplift. The economy is, for use of a better term, a bit of a shit show at the minute. Businesses are really nervous. Leaders don't want to put their head on the chopping block. So we've moved from this growth at all costs mindset, particularly within the tech space, to a much more conservative one where businesses are just trying to protect what they currently have. So, of course, this messaging that's leading with we can provide 4x ROI isn't necessarily going to resonate because that's just not how they're currently thinking.
And I think it's interesting when you think about that based on what Bob said about could cost of inaction also be phrased what's your shoulda, woulda, coulda story. We all have at least one. I actually think there's like a more real-time version of this. So we're like not quite in the place where we're thinking shoulda, woulda, coulda, but we're almost like frozen in place, which is what inaction looks like. So, and I know I experience this a lot in the current industry when it comes to marketing because people are continuing to do everything they used to do, which worked at one point, but it doesn't work anymore. And they're not yet in this shoulda, woulda, coulda part of the story. They're just in like, we have to keep doing this and we have to keep doing more. So Jordan, is that something that you saw? And then I'd love to hear from the rest of the panel as well as this, like, what's up with this doing more of what doesn't work?
Yeah, it's I think what's the saying, better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. Something I've probably butchered that, but I think a lot of leaders are in that sort of position where it's just better to stick with what they're doing but do more of it to try and close the gap rather than do something that's potentially different that could potentially close the gap but also could have an adverse effect. So, I think for so long that value-led messaging worked, but we're reaching an inflection point at the minute, and that's what sort of led me to explore how else I could try and start these conversations, still leveraging some of those great stats, but just framing it in a different way.
I believe part of the challenge is that in general, our default is no. And no seems safe because no means I'm not going to change. But if nothing ever changes, then nothing ever changes. And that can be pretty dangerous too. Most of us don't realize the cost of not changing. And that's what we're talking about here with the cost of inaction. The coulda, shoulda, wouldas are really the things that we don't see as having a cost at the time, but it's the opportunity cost that we missed. And that's so hard to calculate.
I think it's more fundamental than that. I think that what's happened is that organizations have come to market with a new product, and the new product has been attractive because it's the only one like it, or oh, that's a really neat idea, we'll go for some of that. So it's quite easy to sell that initially, and then that becomes commoditized, and you're not the only person that has that USP, or not the only organization that has that USP. And I think that I don't think that the 4 times ROI is an issue about the buyer's mindset. What I do think is an issue is that we focus on messaging. And the problem with focusing on messaging is that somewhere deep inside all of us is this belief that if I get the messaging right, all of a sudden the phone will start ringing. And that's delusional behavior. So when people say, "Oh, I'm going to post something and it'll go viral and it'll be great and 1 million people will see it," but the phone still won't ring, because people are not going to do your job for you. So if I want you to buy something, Jordan, I have to basically knock on your door and convince you that I'm a nice enough guy for you to listen to what I'm going to say, and then have a compelling enough reason for you to want to buy what it is that I'm selling. For me, just to put some stickers up on the lampposts is an irrelevance, and you'll see it as an intrusion rather than something that you'll engage with. So I think that the place that you've just been, the place that you've just been, they have become victims of this, as we see so often. Startups grow really quickly, and then all of a sudden it drops off a cliff. And the reason it drops off a cliff is because people have, the latest, greatest new thing is now someone else's product. And they learn very quickly that, in the case of a video tool, it's brilliant because this will create something which will engage people really well. Yeah, it will. And it's a slicker way of doing things than it is to use your iPhone and just shoot it and upload it straight away. But it isn't going to do it for you. You have to continue to make those videos. You have to continue to publish those videos. You have to continue to invite people to watch those videos. You have to continue to have a good story to tell with those videos. And most people don't bother. And that, I think, is what the problem is.
Well, and I think one of the things when I was thinking about this, specific from the video production scenario, is that this is something people buy when they have money, right? When people have budget to play with, they will buy that type of stuff because they're like, okay, it'd be really great to have an explainer video about what our software does. So like, let's have this, right? And we do it because we have a extra $1,000 or $1,500 that we can just throw at stuff. Not as many businesses have that anymore. And so now when we're thinking about what we're going to invest in from a marketing perspective, we're using more judgment than we used to use. And so now more of the relationship comes into play, more of the, yes, the ROI, but I think people have stopped believing that anything can just 4 times my ROI, because I've tried a whole bunch of things that promised me they were going to 4 times my ROI and they didn't. So now I can't believe anything would do that because it must all be marketing fluff.
Yeah. It's like my gym membership
in the industry.
It's like my gym membership. I pay that month over month and nothing happens. I did not get 4 times ROI. Oh, you mean I have to do something? You took my money and you promised these results. You said nothing about me doing any work.
Well, and I think a lot of these things too have been based on like, okay, you give me your messaging, I'll turn this into a video, right? But who's making the judgment call on whether or not that content, like Adam said, means anything, right? So now I'm going to be, I say this to my clients all the time. Okay, you can invest this much into a video that nobody's going to see because we don't have a strategy for people to see the video. Okay, we're just creating a video. We need to talk about how these things are connected. And I think one of the problems, and I'd love to hear other thoughts on this too, is that so often in the industry, we're saying like, this is the answer, video is the answer, or even like social selling is the answer. And we have one thing, but none of these one things work unless they work together, right? This is part of the system.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about here is highlighting and quantifying the pain often before someone's actually felt it fully. And I'm sure we're going to get into some examples in a minute, Jordan, but it I think now presents a time for me to tell that little story, because
tell the story, Alex.
There was
once upon a time.
Yeah, once upon a time, there was a procrastinator, and the procrastinator had a problem about procrastinating. So he went to the guru and shared this problem with him, and the guru said, "I want you to go home and plant a tree in your garden." So, slightly confused, slightly baffled, but feeling somewhat inspired, he went and bought a tree and took it home and said, "Oh, I'm going to plant that tomorrow." And
The end.
Yeah. There's more. So tomorrow came, weeks flew by, and one hot summer's day, when this procrastinator was feeling like he needed some shade, he thought, "I'll go and plant my tree." And he went to grab the tree, and it had withered and died. So he went back to admitting his fear, and the guru nodded and said, "Well, you see, the cost of inaction is not just about of shade, but also the loss of time, the loss of the opportunity, and even the tree itself sometimes later becomes never." And I think that, that right there is the thing, what is the cost of inaction, and how do we help people to truly quantify that?
It's a good story. And one of the things that I think, I'm thinking coming out of this, is that in a business scenario, the tree dying is the business dying. And I think a lot of times we don't extrapolate out that far. We think well, this is something that worked. I'm going to keep pushing it. It's going to work again. Right? That's the mindset. And what did Bob call that? Entrenchment.
Bob Britton.
Yes, Bob Britton. He called it entrenchment. And this is the thing, but we don't ask ourselves enough questions to actually dig ourselves out of our trench, and then we kill our tree. But we did that. So there's a level of responsibility here. And Jordan, one of the things you referenced earlier on in the show was a fear. There's a fear of doing something different. But something that I've always wondered about. Now, I'm a let's try it and see what happens type of person. I don't have the fear of failure like a lot of people do. We are afraid to do something different, but the thing we're doing is providing zero results. I've shared this example on this show before. I was working with a sales rep who was getting no meetings booked, 125 calls a week, no meetings booked. So as far as I'm concerned, that's completely unproductive, and we should try something else. We tried something else for a week. He made 8 calls, booked 3 meetings. And all my CEO could say about it was that, well, how come he didn't make 125 calls? Like, entrenchment, folks. What we're doing now actually is working, but you still want to go back to the old way of doing it because we're so convinced by not even data. I'm not sure what we're convinced by, because the data would say it doesn't work. That
we're convinced by personal experience, aren't we? Because 30 years ago, when I started calling people, I knew that if I called more people, I'd have more success. So now you're setting out. Now you need to go through the same process.
Yeah, when I first started cold calling, people really enjoyed it. People loved hearing from me because it was the only way they knew about what was going on. Because, of course, there was no internet. But if I take that and apply it to today's thinking, it's relevant.
What about, do you think if we look at COVID and the over-hiring that happened post-COVID, and now we're in this space where, there continues to be redundancies. I think, was it Spotify just made a load of redundancies, didn't they? It's still happening. So do you think businesses look back, or people within businesses look back and say, we made a mistake?
No, because what they're doing is they're often, and I left a comment to this effect on Jordan's post this morning, they're hiring the wrong people and they're firing the wrong people. So if you're a salesperson and you are at more than 100% of your number, then you should be cost negative to the business. it should be cheaper to keep you than let you go, shouldn't it? And if that isn't the case, then the number that you've been set is the wrong number, or the remuneration package is the wrong package. But within every organization, the top performing salesperson should be the last person to be let go. And that's a mistake that a lot of businesses make. They go, headcount, okay, well, you guys in your team, we'll get rid of all of you and we'll keep this team over here, rather than saying, okay, you're a high performer, you stay, you're a low performer, you don't stay. And it's this almost like a self-abusive behavior within the business. You know, and we see this time and time and time again.
Is that where you know there needs to be some training, some guidance within businesses to truly understand the impact of the decisions they're making? So, you know, here is plan A, here is plan B, here is plan C, here is the uplift for the business for each of those paths, and here is the cost to the business if we fail.
But I think this is just about diligence within the business, and it's common sense, isn't it? You know, so I go to Tim and I say to him, I think it's a really good idea if we spend £100,000 on advertising, and I convince him that it's a really good idea. So we spend £100,000 on advertising, and he says to me after the campaign is complete, how much stuff did we sell off the back of that? And I say, I don't know. And understandably, he's very, very upset about this. And I say, I need a bit more time. So I pull the figures together and I say, we sold £50,000 worth of product as a result of this. And he said, so I gave you £2 and you gave me £1 back. How's that good business? And the next time I go to him and say, I think we should do an advertising campaign, he should say, no.
One of the words will be off.
one of the words will be off. It'll be a very, very short sentence. But I think that the problem that we have in the overwhelming majority of organizations is that they're successful by luck. And when the luck runs out, they don't know what they need to do things differently. And your idea, Tracy, you know, the fact that I'm doing this, it doesn't work anymore. Well, I'll stop doing that and I'll do something else. The worst that can happen is I get no benefit, the same thing that I had before. But most organizations don't seem to operate that way. You know, Tim and I know somebody who is a senior marketer, and we said, yeah, but you know, this thing you're doing, this advertising campaign you're doing, it doesn't work, does it? And he said, no, they don't work, but you've got to do the basics, haven't you? And we looked at each other and just, I mean, it's not often that we're lost for words. And the two of us just went, what can you say to that?
Yeah. No, actually, you don't. This is the thing, though, right? It becomes like industry. I think people interpret it as like industry best practice, but it's not actually best practice. It's just like industry doings that people have made basic, right? I remember, like, I worked at a retail furniture company, and I asked the VP of marketing what the ROI was on our TV spend. And they were like, we don't know. You just have to do TV. In this industry, you just have to do TV. And I always think if you're a big enough business, then fine, go to town. Like I said, but if you have disposable income and you want to use it for advertising, sure, great, good, right? But if you're in the scenario where now you are laying off salespeople who are reaching more than 100% of their quota because you don't have enough funnel, you're not asking the right questions.
Absolutely.
And I think
the thing about
a lot of
advertising
this comes down to asking good questions.
Advertising is great because it creates that kind of background visibility and that noise in the marketplace about it. No, it doesn't. People have got better things to do with their time than tune into your vacuous adverts. And that's the truth most of the time, isn't it?
Advertising is a bit like urinating yourself, isn't it? It gives you that warm feeling earlier on, and then you realise it's actually a big smelly mistake.
Well, that joke was way better than my joke at the beginning.
That just come from nowhere, Tim.
No, just waiting to pounce. It's the Christmas winter. It
was worth it. It was worth
brings
it.
out in you, you know.
Yeah, talking like that.
Yeah.
Can I just say that Jordan, that the moment that I knew things were bad in that organization, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, was when they started giving, was it $200 Amazon vouchers to have a meeting with you? And it really pissed me off because I couldn't work out how to get the $200. I was more, I mean, a 30-minute pitch that's worth, I can get a lot of vinyl for $200. And it would have been worth sitting to a pitch about this video stuff just to get the voucher.
Yeah, you are right. I think everyone was sort of scratching their heads there, but apparently the data supported it. So don't know how that.
Well, if you pay somebody $200, the data will support the fact that they turned up to the meeting. It will.
Yeah.
Well,
I would have gone to the meeting.
And we're touching on another topic here, which is not necessarily true of Vidyard, but I am aware it happens in other companies where leadership fudge the numbers because they want to continue doing something or they want to attribute value to an activity to just keep getting support for that activity.
No.
I'm aware of companies that get zero for nothing and they fudge the numbers and it shows. So I know a company that's got zero from it, but the numbers show that the two biggest deals they did that year came from that particular event.
Yeah.
I'm like, this confuses me. Like, what's the long-term benefit of that?
There's no long-term benefit. It's to save
it's not
people.
a good business proposition, right? That's just
somebody has a KPI. They have to show the benefit of spending money, and so they did.
Right. Yeah.
The benefit is I kept my job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then in the grand scheme of things, we have a KPI problem. We have a remuneration problem. Like we're not actually now on a team together moving the business towards success. We've actually created competition between the departments to win, which is actually hurting the business.
Yeah.
But I can't control those other things, Tracy. I can control the numbers that I report. And if my job depends on it, you damn well better think that I'm going to report the best numbers that I can report. Fudge them? No, but if I can take credit for something.
Being business?
No, but it doesn't. It doesn't, does it? For your business, it does. So
but this is like precisely the experience that we're exploring here with Jordan, right? Like somebody who has overachieved what their KPIs are. So let's say, and that's an actual overachievement, not I fudged the numbers overachievement, and still got let go. So it doesn't actually play into my job security at all, unless I'm really, and like I said, in Jordan's scenario, it's just as crazy because you've actually been investing in the business and growing it from a sales perspective, and it's still not enough. So then what's enough?
But
I can make a case for it.
With a big business, it doesn't operate in the same way as a small business. If TLB coaching and events doesn't sell something, you don't get to buy your groceries this week. That's the mechanics of that. Within a big organization where there's a huge amount of money coming in some cases a huger amount of money going out, you're only, it's a big river that's going past and you've got a bucket that you're dipping in and out of the river. So there was one organization that we worked with, and one of the people that we had trained did a post. The post got quite a lot of traction, and they got a message from somebody that they'd known but hadn't spoken to for 7 years. And this person said, "We should have a chat, please." And it transpired to be a $100 million deal. And the company refused to acknowledge that was because the person had messaged them off the back of the post because, well, you already knew them. Yeah, but I've not had any interaction with them for 7 years. Yeah, but you already knew them, so that doesn't count. But
that's a good point.
And it is this lack of pragmatism around the measurement of these things and prove it. Well, loads of people are going to see our post and it'll increase brand recognition for. Okay, that's great that you say that, and that's a nice story. Prove it. This is a really successful campaign. Prove it. And often. It's the fault of the marketer in this instance, but often there is no mechanism set up before the event. So have you set up a unique phone number or a unique email or a unique web page that this drives to, in order that you can say, okay, we've got XD visitors, and the only way they could do this is by this mechanism. But a lot of the time, it's making really foolish mistakes, like in Jordan's instance. I
want to hear the case that Rob wants to make.
So you were just asking, how is it in the leader's best interest to fudge the numbers while we're letting people go? First of all, I'm not advocating for fudging the numbers, but I am saying that everyone will want to take credit for success. So the marketing team is going to say it was the event that we ran that brought that customer in. The salesperson is going to say, no, it was me being a great salesperson that brought that customer in. But to your point, if it doesn't drive revenue, why are they doing it? If I can kick the can down the road for one more quarter, keep my job for one more quarter, while polishing my resume with, hey, look at this success that I drove, that is in my best interest, where the company didn't benefit at all. It's because we have a misalignment between the company's objectives and my personal objectives that would drive behavior like that. But how do you otherwise justify that? Nobody in marketing wants to say, yeah, I'll be held accountable for sales revenue because I can't control I give sales these great opportunities and they screw them up. I don't want to be held accountable for that. So that's how it breaks down. And that's where the case could be. Well, I say case could be made. I still wouldn't justify it, but that's the reasoning.
And I'm sure that is something that lots of people have done. So like somebody's making a case, right? For sure. Yeah. And this is something that's interesting because I saw a while back, there's a lady in my network who had posted that she had been made redundant and worked in the marketing department and had done all of these things, right? Grown the community by X amount, gotten X amount of podcast interviews for people and blah, blah, blah. All these things, which I happen to know she had KPIs for. So these were the things that she was supposed to do on behalf of the business. She was made redundant. And so what my brain says is those things don't drive business, because if they did, there would be enough money to pay this person to keep doing those things. That's what my brain says. But the thing that's interesting is that like now this is what's on her resume, right? I've done this and I've done this, and they're achievements, and they're perceived as achievements, I think, both personally and in the market, but they don't actually contribute to business growth. And that's a problem with the KPIs, right? I was hired to do this. I did this. And now if they were actually meaningful, they would have driven the business. Like Adam said, with the sales remuneration, right? If you can't keep someone who's selling more than 100% of quota, you've done something wrong here with your math. Mm. But then whose responsibility is that? Is that the leader's responsibility? Is that the CFO's responsibility?
Well, let's circle
we try to avoid it.
Let's circle back to this whole thing about the cost of inaction. And what we see time and again is organizations are, it's not that they're not doing something, but they're doing the same things, the things that used to work. And there is a fear about doing something different, even though the cost of inaction is, well, continuing doing what they're doing. They know that they're on a downward spiral because they see that they have no pipeline, they have no revenue, and that only leads to one place. So the challenge is, how do you get people to do something different, to have an experimental mindset, to try something they haven't tried before, knowing that the worst that can happen is they're no worse off than they were before.
Invoice them. I was thinking the cost of inaction, and we've said it, it's one of these unrecognized costs. I didn't buy your software, so I did not get a 4x return on my investment. Invoice them for the 4x. It'll at least start the conversation. Where the hell do you get up? Well, this is what you missed out on. But that's why there is that inaction, because I don't see an immediate cost to me for not doing something.
Yeah.
It's a bit like Alex's story, isn't it? That the procrastinator didn't see anything initially. There's no impact.
No.
So how ideas then, folks? How can we bring more besides invoice them?
I
Ideas
thought that was a
on
pretty
like
good
what
one.
can help people see these costs or questions that we could be asking to help us see these costs, hopefully along the line instead of at a like go no go point where I have to lay off my entire sales team.
Well, seeing as we've got a guest, Jordan, what do you do to shake people out of their kind of their slumber and try to get them to behave differently as a result of talking to you? Because clearly it works for you, because you were ahead of target and you'd only been there 7 months, so that's a remarkable achievement. So how did you do that where others had failed?
Yeah, so the first step I took was simply reverse engineering all those incredible uplifts. So, we can help you to book 4 times more calls. The way that I would frame that is, are you aware that you're only reaching a quarter of your meeting booking potential? And essentially just using that as a mechanism to enter that consultative conversation where those different costs can be brought to light. So rather than just purely making a statement, it's just asking a question that's associated to a cost of inaction, and then being able to continue on that conversation. Because I think there are a few times where it got people's heckles up a little bit and they got a bit defensive. That was fine because they responded and we started having that conversation and went on that journey together. And I think that was the key, really, rather than making bold statements about the uplift. It was just asking the question and seeing if that question resonated, if they thought about it in that light previously, or if not, if they were unaware of it at the time.
And it wasn't just an email; it was an email and a video. It was you explaining it. Is that right?
Yeah, at times. So I was using social as a mechanism to build relationships, and then all of my email copy was centered around the cost of inaction. And as I said, it was purely just asking questions in different ways, trying to unearth something that some piece of insight, something, something that resonated with the prospect to then to continue the conversation, essentially.
And then how would you?
Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
How would you then continue that? So let's say you then started having the conversation. How would you support that? A, validate it, and B, support that message.
Yeah, so again, I think I sort of continued working backwards. So one of the key points of conversation with Vidyard was, booked meetings or piped revenue. Then it was identifying, okay, what are your key metrics that you're measuring that then lead up to that point, and just going all the way back to the root. And throughout that conversation, we'd identify, okay, well, this is potentially a key area that's costing you. Perhaps you're doing this very well. And it just sort of opened up the conversation and trying not to be too rigid in it. As you said, there's various different costs associated, not just a dollar figure. So that sort of typically created quite a fruitful conversation from that.
So more about the conversation and the questioning.
Yeah.
How, talk a little bit about the temptation to then say, but we can 4x your revenue or pipeline. Did that come into the conversation, or did you always keep it at that level where it was questioning? And
no, it definitely crept in at times, whether it be out of tiredness or just because there is a bit of friction and it's so easy to fall back on the figures, right? But it's detrimental. Like, as soon as I then said, oh, but by doing this, you can expect 4 times more meetings, I knew I'd shot myself in the foot, and that was the conversation pretty much over, because trying to get back to that consultative point was really tough.
I guess you're then waiting for the moment that they then say, "Oh, so can you help with that?" They
Yeah,
invite you to talk about the value.
exactly that. And then that next step was a demo, but I hate saying the word demo. So the way that I framed it was, okay, now I've understood your process. This next step with my colleague will be them identifying those key points that we've spoken about and showing you where this could fit into your existing process. And I found that helped. Again, at the end of the day, it is a demo, but it's just, it felt as if people were, don't know if excited is an overstatement, but they would actually then show up to that demo rather than thinking, oh shit, I've got to listen to this hour demo that's just come straight out off the back of a cereal box,
I think in most cases, Jordan, what's happened is that sellers have educated buyers that the demo is part of the process. So
it gives them something they want to see, right?
Yes. So often we will want to kind of see it, because it's a bit like, buying a car, and what you do is you say, can you open the hood, or can you open the trunk, or and you kick the tires or whatever. So you do want to see what you're going to buy. But we also have educated people to say that is part of the process.
The bonnet and the boot for English viewers.
But I think that the biggest issue for most people, so in my experience of talking to organisations, they never acknowledge that they have a problem pitching, and they never have acknowledge that they have a problem closing. So every single team that I've ever worked with, they all say, oh, we have no trouble closing business, no problem at all. And they do. Of course, they have a problem closing business. And of course, they have a problem pitching and presenting it in the right way. But I think that their biggest challenge, and they think their biggest challenge, is being able to get those conversations in the first place. Once I've got you on a call, or I've got you across the table from me, it's fine. I'm on home turf then. That I can deal with. So how do I get you from out there in the ether, one of my target companies, target accounts, target areas, how do I get you on a call with me so that I can woo you with my charm and intelligence?
And good looks, Adam.
And good looks. Thank you, Alex. I was waiting for somebody to come in with that. Yeah. So what's the secret, Jordan?
Again, I'm teaching you all how to suck eggs. You taught me exactly how to do it. It's by being human, right? Rather than I think, just to preface it, I think generally within sales, whenever something that's cut from the efficiency cloth works, we end up working to death. And I think that's what's pushed us to the point in which we're at, where buyers will not go anywhere near anything that's vendor produced or vendor associated, because they know it's going to be the same song off a different hymn sheet, So the most valuable thing that we can provide is ourselves within that process, and it's all about identifying those commonalities in which you can start a conversation and then continue that conversation, and being human throughout the entire process, right? Because no one wants to be told that their baby's ugly. So I think by being able to take that consultative approach and really empathize with the pains that your prospects are feeling is going to be a way for a more productive conversation, where you can actually start to identify what the real decision-making criteria is and get to the core of that, rather than just being sort of on face value, which is what I think a lot of salespeople do. They have happy ears, they hear something they want, and then they'll move people through the process. And then that lack of clarity surrounding what the true decision-making criteria actually is will come to light and end up biting them in the butt. So I think, the key is to just be human. And, one while it is a numbers game, I think we've already spoken about vanity metrics or KPIs being out of line with true business outcomes. So I think there's a lot deeper conversation to be had there as well.
Yeah, I think that the reason that I want to continue on this thread for a moment is that you're different to the rest of us on this call, because we train people how to use tools to generate more conversations and meetings, and you've gone off and done that and been hugely successful doing it. So, it's great that I'm a teacher and I show people how to do it, but you're somebody that has picked up this ball and run with it. And, normally when I've worked in a tech organization, you would expect somebody to be in the company with their feet under the table for 6 months before they even started to generate any degree of success. You were there for barely more than 6 months and you were already ahead of your target. So this is a remarkable achievement. So you had, a month of onboarding and a month of learning about the product and a month of trying to identify what your target market was and who your targets were, and a quarter of actually selling stuff. And you've done your year in a quarter. And I think that the key thing here for people watching this program is that they need to try to emulate what you did, because for most of these organizations, they need to have somebody like you that hits the ground running and is productive from day one, because for many of the organizations that I talk to, the clock is ticking, and 6 months of somebody that I'm paying salary, car, expenses, overheads, and they're not selling anything is 6 months when I'm digging deeper into the hole rather than climbing out of it. So
I think
talk us through what you do.
Before you do, Jordan, just for you guys, in case you weren't aware, Jordan has 3 offers on the table at the moment. So
I'm not surprised. I am. I'm surprised it's only 3.
Just take what Adam said there, take the transcript, and go back to each one of those companies and see if you can negotiate your offer.
Yeah. Well, thanks guys for all the kind words. The way that I break the process down is into sort of 4 stages. It's initially profile. So I want to make sure that I'm as attractive as possible to anyone that goes on my profile. As you mentioned, I want them to think, okay, he's a half decent chap. I'll listen to what he has to say. The next is connections, and then moving into engagement. And I'll sort of pair those 2 together because I think, they are almost synonymous. So the more people I connect with, the more people are going to see my stuff, the more people are going to hear what I have to say. And then the law of averages, the more people are actually going to accept that call for me. And then the third piece is engagement. And this is the most crucial piece. Because throughout my time at Vidyard, whenever the engagement dropped, so did everything else. Right. So it's all about inserting myself to as many networking conversations as possible on social, dropping likes, dropping comments, trying to stimulate a conversation within the comments section. But also sort of selfishly, that then influences the content that I create and I publish. And, if I'm casting the net wide, I can identify posts that are tightly aligned with what I'm doing. If I'm working in a territory, then it's a case of going through each prospect, looking at what they're engaging with, and then engaging on that, because they're going to be notified that I too have shown an interest, and they're going to be more likely to accept my connection, have a conversation. And it gives me a reason to reach out to them, right? And then that final piece is publish. So create content that's true to you, that tells a good story in an outside of the box way. That's more for my own sanity's sake. And then that, of course, lives on my profile. So we go full circle, and it ends up having multiplicative effects on the previous, and so on and so forth.
I want to just add something really quick on there, because for those of you who are watching, you can see that Jordan's tagline is the sales poet. And I think the important thing to notice here is this isn't actually about creating a whole bunch of sales poets. It's about people finding their thing. right? If you follow Jordan, you'll see that makes sense for him based on how he expresses and his background. And there's a trust the marketer to come back to branding. There's a branding component of this that is unique to Jordan, and each of us have done a similar thing, right? Like we have our thing. Adam's got guitars. Right? This isn't about saying like, oh, I'm trying to pick something in my office because this isn't my office. That's not representative of me, but I can't reach it.
Boring gray binders.
Yes, this is Jordan's recent post, right? And like, I love any kind of musical post that Jordan did because I love music things, right? And this is the thing I think people don't. We look at the strategies, and Jordan did a really great job of outlining the strategies, but this is something people will like or people will not like based on who they are, right? And it actually has nothing to do with selling video or selling anything else. It has to do with who Jordan is as a person, and people can connect with him as a person. And then we can have a sales conversation because it's easier to have a sales conversation because we already like each other. Or like in Adam's example, I can be like, hey, I've known you for 7 years. I have a client right now who I knew for 8 years before they became a client of mine.
I love the fact that on this video, it starts off with you being miserable, and it's black and white and it's quite dour. And then it goes to color and you start to smile and, your voice becomes more engaged. I just think it's so elegant what you've done there.
But it's also not about everybody doing that.
No, but it is about finding the ways that you can express yourself. And for some people that's in writing, and for some people that's in imagery, and for some people that's in video, and for some people it's just being nice to other people.
Yeah, that is my statement.
It's got a good vibe. You guys should watch it. Follow Jordan. There's lots of creative stuff. I want to quickly come back because I know we're running out of time here, but Bob had a really interesting conversation about putting a good person on a bad system, and the bad system will win every time. Because I think this does play into the conversation about inaction, right? And this happens a lot in sales, a lot. We cycle people through a bad system, and we just cycle people every 18 months to get new people. And we think that that's action because we're hiring people, we're training people, we're doing things, right? That's not inaction, but I'm hiring them into a bad system and I'm not doing anything about the bad system. And therefore we continue to have this churn. The inaction is really based on the system component. So we've talked ad nauseum about the KPIs that don't work. And these are the things that we really need to look at is where is our inaction happening, right? Where is action actually covering up inaction? And that might actually be where our pain point is. So I wanted to call out that comment because I thought it was really relevant to the conversation.
Well, and I think to that point, Tracy, and to what Jordan was saying earlier, I think that's where the questioning is so vital to try and help the individual understand the outcome of continuing doing the things that they're doing today, or where they'll end up if they continue doing the things that they're doing today.
So I think there's just a curiosity that we could bring to the table that, and not just, I'm putting us into the category of leaders, but empowering our organizations to ask questions about what are the pieces of this process that you see are working, that you see are not working, or that are working for you but not your coworker, or because everybody who's a salesperson has a unique selling identity and all of these things too, right? Like asking these questions around inaction, and at the same time then being able to listen to those questions and not be so this is the way we do it. But I don't know if I know an answer to this is the way we've always done it conversation. Any last thoughts from
last thought from me? Plant that tree.
Plant the trees. And
Yeah.
it's good for the environment as well.
Last thought from me. If there is no pain, you won't do the thing differently in the future. But you have to ask yourself, when you say, well, this is how we do it, whatever it may be, if you're looking at an empty pipeline, then something isn't working. So you have to change something.
Get better at math.
Sound like Rishi Sunak.
Well, we think of these things as strictly linear. And growth is going to continue in one straight line, as though it's a simple y equals mx plus b. And it is so much more complex than that. And the variables are always changing. If you understand the math behind those equations, you'll understand that tomorrow will not be just like today. So there will be a cost to not changing from what you're doing today.
Tim or Jordan, any last thoughts?
No, other than it's been an absolute pleasure to be back on the download with you all. Thoroughly enjoyed
And
it.
congratulations.
Jordan.
You're welcome, Jordan.
Yes. Come back anytime.
Come back in 6 months.
and tell us how you have reached 100+% of your quota at whatever new company you're working for.
I will do.
And Rob, if whoever's closing out the show, Tracy or Rob, I don't have the QR code available.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure we don't have the QR code for today. But that doesn't mean that if you're watching the show and you would like to be a guest, that you shouldn't contact us, because you should. And you've seen all of our lovely faces here today. You're probably connected to one of us. So if you are, just send us a message and tell us, I would like to be a guest on the download.
You can also go to digitaldownload.live, and the Be Our Guest section is right at the top. Click on that, fill out the application. We'd love to hear from you.
We would love to hear from you. And was there anything else you normally do to close out, Rob?
Just thank everyone for
Normally
being
we have
here.
the QR code and we do the fun pointing thing, but we don't have it. So now we just have to
That's the digital download, which is the
longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, now globally syndicated.
There we go.
Boom.
Now we're going to have to change that up.
Right, yeah, just so we can have to confuse everybody. But thank you to the wonderful panelists, all of your genius for sharing. Thank you to our guests, really great, especially Bob Britton. You had some wonderful, great perspectives you added to the conversation. So thank you for bringing those. And folks, we're here every week at the same time. So you should put it in your calendar and come and check it out, because we're always talking about digitally things. And bring your friends as well. Invite your friends, because the more brains and perceptions that we have in the conversation, the more we all get to learn. So with that, I don't actually have control of the live button. Alex does.
I do.
So thank you, everybody. And until next time, I don't know, be yourself.
Have a great weekend, guys.